Good morning. Welcome to QSLiN's second PD webinar of the 2025-2026 school year. My name is Laura Wolf, and I'm the school board librarian for the Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board. This is also my second year as co-chair of QSLiN and as co-chair of the QSLiN Professional Development Committee. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded and made available on the QSLiN YouTube channel. If you do not want your image recorded, please ensure that your camera is off. I would like to start by acknowledging the First Peoples on whose traditional territories I live and work. I'm currently on the island of Montreal, land which is a traditional unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka or Mohawk Nation. In the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration, we honor our relationship with the Indigenous community and respect the history, culture, and language of Canada's original peoples. So today we're talking about weeding our library collections. Sometimes people struggle to understand the need for libraries to discard books. It may stem from nostalgia or the emotional feeling that books are sacred, and seeing books discarded from the library can be upsetting. It's important to remember that the purpose of the school library is not to be an archive or a book museum. Our job as school library personnel is to connect students and staff with the best resources available. Weeding is an essential component of any collection development plan, needed to maintain a collection that meets the current needs of students, teachers, and the curriculum. Without further ado, I introduce you to Chelsea Baker, board librarian from the Central Quebec School Board in Quebec City, who is going to show you how to take your collection from overgrown to outstanding. Chelsea.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome everyone to our presentation on weeding school library collections. So weeding is an essential library skill that some of us face with a lot of trepidation and others really look forward to. I'm somewhere in the middle. When I think back in my time at library school, I can't recall any class or assigned reading on the topic, but I can tell you that weeding has been a part of every library position I have ever had. So my first professional experience with weeding was in a large downtown public library where all of my colleagues were my mentors. There was about 15 of us, and each of us had our own little sliver of collection to look after. Whenever I had a question, I was reassured and guided by my colleagues, and it was a great process. I never felt alone. And that's not the case in our school libraries. Often we're the only ones making the decisions. Years later, I got a job with an academic institution that had recently reopened their library as a learning commons. My job was to sort through the 500 plus boxes of books that had just come out of storage. There wasn't enough shelving in the new space to accommodate all the books, which meant weeding thousands of titles. My small percentage did not give me too many opportunities to collaborate with the stakeholders on what to prioritize. There was a collection development policy in place that helped me immensely. In this job, I really sharpened my weeding eyes, and I started to look at shelving space as prime real estate. I'd look at a book and say, are you shelf worthy? In my current position, many years ago, an English used bookstore closed and donated all of its holdings to the CQSB libraries. My previous experience in boxes helped me jump into planning mode right away. I went over to the store, spoke with the owner about the need to do a pre-weeding assessment and selection before the items were boxed up. This picture is exactly what that bookstore looked like. They did have some new releases, which I boxed up right away, but there were thousands of books that I was able to pre-weed before they saw the inside of a delivery truck, saving a lot of time and money. If ever you find yourself in a position where you need to pack up a library for a move or a renovation, I recommend that you weed before you put books into boxes so that you won't be moving things that should never have been packed up in the first place. Lastly, I was a documentation technician working in a small elementary school for 14 years. This picture shows how meager the collection was back then. Look at those empty shelves. I did have the library matching grant book budget, but I really didn't feel like I could toss anything away. Building the collection felt so gradual, and I wanted to offer something to students. All of these experiences help me in my own weeding skills. I still don't feel like an authority on the topic, but I do hope to pass on some helpful tips that will guide you in your next weeding project. I would like to be your mentor if you need one. So in this presentation, by the end of this presentation, I should say, I hope that you understand that weeding plays an important role in collection development. I hope that you know where to find all the tools you need to weed with confidence. And I want you to think critically about the deselection process. And when I say think critically, I mean that I want you to take the time to learn this essential skill or build on the skill you already have and develop your own weeding eyes. I've heard it said that weeding is an art and not a science. And I completely agree. I'm sure that if my QSLiN colleagues, all of my QSLiN colleagues would have a different approach to weeding projects. And I look forward to the rich discussion we're going to have later on in the presentation when we look at some weeding scenarios. All of the ideas in my presentation came from library leaders and library organizations. My works cited will be posted on the QSLiN website as a takeaway. So I noticed a lot of common weeding facts as I went through all of my sources. And here are some of the facts that I found that were reoccurring. Number one, that space is limited. When it all comes down to it, we can't keep everything. Two, time spent building our collections merits time spent evaluating, removing, reviewing dated and irrelevant books. Three, budget fluctuations. Budgets fluctuate and can influence our weeding practices. Maybe you're experiencing a lean book budget year. This might make you rely more on donations and might make you want to weed less. Laura mentioned this in the intro, and it's so true. Emotions can play a role. Emotion in the form of attachment, of nostalgia, or a feeling of responsibility to use taxpayer dollars responsibly. These emotions can bring on decision fatigue. You feel like a deer in the headlights and decisions are just too hard to make. Well, don't let emotions get in the way of your weeding project. Well-maintained collections have a series of common traits. Number one, they're accessible. They're easy to navigate and neat. They're inclusive. The books represent your entire school library community. They're balanced. There's something for everyone in a variety of formats. They're current. They're up to date and reflect current interests. And they're appealing. Well-maintained collections put engagement first and contribute to the development of positive attitudes towards reading and learning in general. Also, after pouring through all of these different resources, there were top reasons why libraries weed books, and we'll go look at those now. To maintain a current, useful, and dynamic collection, to adapt to changing needs and interests of students and teachers, to accommodate changes in the school's curriculum, to improve physical appearance of the collection by making newer, nicer, and more relevant materials more visible, to make room for new materials, to make the best use of floor and shelf space, to assess the collection's strengths and weaknesses and to identify gaps, and my favorite, to increase circulation. There's also some side effects of weeding that are really beneficial. We get to know our collection. Knowledge of your collection is power. When you can put the right book in the right hands at the right moment because you're familiar with everything you've got, people are going to notice. We learn what is used, what is not used, and where there are gaps. Weeding requires you to have some observational skills about what's happening in your space. With fewer unappealing books on the shelf, readers can find books that match their interests more easily. Circulation will go up. Have you ever heard of the expression? I don't know if it's an expression, but you need to pull the weeds so the kids can find the flowers. I heard that in a podcast I'm going to talk about later. We build a good reputation as a space that is worthy of investment. We are part of our school community that can help fulfill the learning and reading goals of the school. And most importantly, we become indispensable members of the school team. And that's what I hope for all of you, that you have a sense of belonging in your school communities because your weeding practices can make a difference. So how do you respond to questions about the deselection process? It's very odd for a lot of people to see books being thrown out of the library. You can respond with this quote that I made up. It is important to provide the most relevant and accurate information for our students and to remove books that are misleading or dated. Our school library is not an archive. We aim to help students develop a love of reading by removing old and unused titles. We help students find the books that encourage curiosity and exploration. So I put this slide in because I want to encourage you to be upfront with your school community about plans to weed in the library. Teachers and administrators can be your allies when you show how weeding can help achieve the learning goals of the school. Too often, library staff feel that weeding is controversial, it has a controversial side, and should be done quietly without drawing too much attention to it. If we are transparent about the plans to weed, and if we can communicate our justifications, then we are less likely to show up on the evening news, which actually happened. There was outrage about a weeding project, and it was on the front page of the papers. If you're still getting questions about the need to weed, explain that books have a shelf life and you can provide evidence. Here's a visual of two books that I recently weeded from CQSB library collections. The historical aspect of these books is pretty fascinating, but this is what I mean when I say that we are not an archive or a museum. Still getting questions about weeding? Give some examples of the ick factor. Imagine, you can ask your colleagues in your administration, imagine you're one of our parents and your child brings one of these books home from the library. How would you feel? Rips, smells, stains, warped pages, loose or overly repaired spines that are all taped up. These are embarrassing and do not help the reputation of your library. On a side note, here would be a good point to throw in that weeding can stir up a lot of dust and mold. So have a mask and gloves at your disposal or wash your hands often. Don't let weeding make you sick. It can also be a really physically demanding task, especially if it's a large scale weeding project. So be mindful about the way you lift and shift and move books in general. Save your backs. So I wanted to go back to that slide because we are going to look at these two acronyms for weeding, and many of you are probably already familiar with them. They are staples in any kind of weeding manual, musty and fresh. Musty came from this manual, CREW. CREW stands for the Continuous and Systematic Review, Evaluation, Weeding of Library Collections. It was developed in 1995 with updated versions since then, but this manual was designed for small and medium-sized libraries. The focus of it is keeping collections current and relevant. It's a good guide for tips on saving space and time, but it was recently deleted from the Texas State Library and Archive Commission, but it is still easy to find PDF versions of CREW on the internet. It is one of the most cited weeding cited. It is the most often cited manuals in weeding literature. Pardon me. So CREW has a section in it about musty. Musty stands for misleading. Is the item factually inaccurate or obsolete? Does it have stereotypes and bias? U is for ugly. What is the physical condition of the book? Is it unappealing, dated, superseded? Is there a newer edition or a more current work available? Trivial. Does the book have any educational merit? Is it engaging? Irrelevant. Does the book serve the needs and interests of the school community? And E for elsewhere. Is it a difficult topic to maintain in terms of keeping current? Can we find information elsewhere? References to musty can be easily found on the internet. For this presentation, I went to the Canadian School Libraries website and clicked on their Collection Diversity Toolkit under Equity Informed Reading. It's an excellent document. I hope you have a chance to check it out. Fresh. This document by Jennifer Lagarde came from a working session where library staff were concerned that their collections were already small and there was no money to replace books. Lagarde says, I err on the side of less being more, and I tend to agree. Choose quality over quantity. More does not always mean it's better. It's not always better to have more. So let's go through this acronym. F is for foster. Does it foster a love of reading? R, does it reflect your diverse population? E, does it reflect an equitable global view? S, does it support the curricula? H, is it high quality text? And her little person here says, if the answer's no, it's gotta go. This is a really great article, and you can find it in the Works Cited on librarygirl.net. So let's take a look at some of our collections in our libraries, and keep in mind these different tips on when you're weeding, what to think about. So in our easy readers and picture books, follow musty, look for dirty fingerprints, rips and creases, scribbles. Some books have inferior bindings or poor quality paper. A lot of paper, if they're in sunlight in your library, will turn yellow right away. Look at the spines. Are they held together with staples? Is it going to hold up in a backpack? Books that have not circulated in over 5 to 10 years. You can look in your catalog for that information. See how many times it's gone out. Media tie-in books that are no longer on television or streaming platforms, or anything with racial or gender bias or stereotypes in the illustrations. Now, books worth reading might often fill more than one of these criteria. Rarely should only one criteria be reason to toss a book unless it's really in bad shape. Physical condition is the easiest way to decide to toss something or replace it. This has not circulated in 5 to 10 years. It might feel like an arbitrary number. It's not easy to set an exact number because weeding is not an exact science, right? How about our juvenile fiction section? What and when to weed? Once again, follow Musty. Have you tried promoting it and it still doesn't budge? You've done a book talk, nobody took it. Might be time to go. Does the title fall within current trends and interests? Media tie-ins that are out of date? I wonder how old Hannah Montana is now, Miley Cyrus. Has not circulated in over 5 years. Is it a repetitive series that has finished its run and no longer used? Have you ever caught yourself vacuuming the tops of books or dusting them off? It's time to think about getting rid of those. Young adult fiction. What to consider? As always, follow Musty. Does it reflect your student population? Is it relevant to teens? Does it foster a love of reading? Is the book cover visually appealing? Teens and kids do judge books by their covers. Check for a newer edition. Books that have not circulated in over 5 years, and when in doubt, book talk it or display it. For this cover of Judy Blume, I did a little search and an article on Book Riot did a retrospective on this book and showcased 10 different covers over the years. Each cover really reflected the book's appeal to teens at the time. So if you have this one, maybe it's time to get a replacement. Nonfiction. These are some suggested guidelines. Students do need access to current unbiased nonfiction. When evaluating nonfiction, look for equitable representation and diverse voices. Below are some Dewey classification suggested copyright markers from the Yavapai Library Network in Arizona in the USA. This source uses the CREW method. So this is what they suggest. Check copyright dates in nonfiction. Look at the text features and the language that is used to determine if the book is comprehensive and worth keeping. We have to remember that books are written, books reflect the times in which they were written. So look for portrayals of specific groups of people and outdated sensibilities. 2 to 10 years for generalities, philosophy 10, religion 2 to 10, 300s in social sciences 5 to 10, language 10, science and math 10 years, technology, I find this one a little bit generous, 5 to 10 years, art, music, and sport, I find 15 years really generous. Literature and poetry is flexible, and history and geography 10 years. With the asterisks mean that these books age a little bit faster. It's a suggestion, all of these. I think now is a good time to read this quote about equity as weeding as an equity issue, considering especially with nonfiction. This quote comes from the Canadian School Library's Collection Diversity Toolkit. Knowledge evolves over time, attitudes shift, societal values expand and evolve, and we begin to see historical and social events from different perspectives. A resource that was selected a decade or more ago may have reflected understandings at the time, but assessed through the lens of current knowledge and understandings may now fall short. It cannot be overstated how important it is to engage in a continuous cycle of weeding when we view the process through this equity lens. Biographies are considered flexible as well, and they present a challenge mainly because of shifting interests and curriculum needs. Reading nonfiction is an important skill, and reading about people, both historical and contemporary, can help build background knowledge and develop interests. The three books on this slide I weeded from a library for multiple reasons, and they're listed below each picture. They weren't circulating, they were dated and unappealing, and I just didn't have space in this library. The school recently bought picture book biographies as well that the teachers were using a lot and were easy to, it was an elementary school, and they made really good read alouds and were promoted easily. There's nothing's wrong with the content of these books. They were all very good, but I I wasn't so sure when I was weeding them, and now I feel more confident about it. You've got to think about your student population always and what matters to them. Focus on keeping readable narrative biographies and less pop culture, although I did buy a Taylor Swift book not too long ago. So a little pop culture wouldn't hurt. Would you keep sports heroes, though, from the 1980s or pop singers from the 1990s? Probably not. They wouldn't matter to your students. Reference collections is another kind of special part of our school library that might be disappearing for some of you. Um, let's come to a consensus on what is in a reference collection or what used to be traditional reference collections. We'd find dictionaries, thesauri, encyclopedias, oversized, heavy table books, the ones that often cost a lot more. You might find atlases, world record books, and almanacs and visual dictionaries. Keeping a reference collection can be challenging because they're expensive and they take up a lot of space and they become obsolete so quickly. Furthermore, students and teachers often turn to the internet to find this information now. For example, Encyclopedia Britannica stopped making physical books in 2010, and now they only exist online. Would you keep your Encyclopedia Britannica from 2009? I don't think so. Would you consider integrating your more current and engaging reference materials into the circulating collection? And what should be weeded permanently? It's something to think about. Ah, beautiful world book here and a due date stamp. Let's have a poll, Laura.
Okay, so our first poll is about reference collections, and we hope that everybody can take the time and give us a little answer. We're just curious. There's no right or wrong answer, but we want to know if you do maintain a reference section, a reference collection that is for in-library use only. So traditionally, right, those reference collections, no one could borrow them. They stayed in the library. That's where they used them. So let's take a few seconds. Do you still maintain a reference section that's for in-library use only? Yes, no. Or for some of you who might work in more than one school or support more than one school, we kept in the option of in some of your schools. And while we're waiting for the results, I'll give you my answer. My experience in the schools that I have worked in is that reference collections aren't used very much anymore. And I do lean towards integrating the good books, the ones worth keeping, into my circulating collection and just get rid of everything else. Nobody's looking at them. They gather dust and they take up space. But I would say within the schools, in my board, it does vary between the different schools as to whether there's a reference collection or not. So let's look at the results. My pop-up disappeared. Are they there? Okay, amazing. So let's see. Look at that. 34% still use reference collections. 53% of our schools, of your schools, do not, or of the respondents, do not have reference collections, and 13% in some schools. So yeah, I mean, they're still out there. How about you, Chelsea?
That's interesting. In CQSB libraries, I would pretty much say that we're in the no camp, but there might be a few schools that keep some things that are for in the library use only. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. Yeah. So reference collections are a hard decision to make, especially as you said. They're expensive. Who wants to
Yeah.
get rid of expensive books? And when you put those big, heavy coffee table books in the circulating collection, they take up a whole backpack, don't they? They weigh more than the small children sometimes. So let's move on. We have a second poll. There is a reason why this picture of this date due slip is up on your screen. A date stamp is a quick way to tell how often and when a book was borrowed. Do you still use date due stamps when signing out library books? Yes, you do. No, you don't. Maybe some of your schools do. Or no, but maybe you're going to start using one after this poll and after this session. Now, I've always used date due stamps. I've worked in elementary for many years. I worked in high school for many years, and I love to use a date due stamp. The extra
I,
5 seconds it
yeah.
takes to stamp a book, like when you're weeding your collection, it's just so much easier to pull the book off the shelf and you can see right away when was the last time that book went out, how often does the book go out, how long has it been in your collection. The date due stamp is so good for that. So even in the elementary schools where you know the class is coming every Monday, this class always comes every Monday, by taking that time to stamp the due date in the back of the book will make your weeding go a lot faster because you don't have to look every book up in the computer.
I think the students would appreciate that seeing it as well. We don't use them. There might be a few of our libraries that use them, but I'm not aware. But I would definitely like to start using them. I think they're kind of vintage looking. I would like to use them. Do we have
I
the
think,
results?
yeah, let's see. Oh, 40% are
Oh,
using JD. I'm
oh, I
surprised. I think
like
that's
it.
amazing. Me too.
Okay, 40%.
55% are not. And nobody is going to start using. Maybe you will. Maybe you will.
I might encourage some.
Yeah.
I'm in that 0%
Yeah.
group. Wow. I would like to start using them.
I don't think any of the libraries in my board, or most of them, are using them. But I really think that they're very useful. I really
Wow,
do.
thanks. Thanks for taking part in the poll, everyone. Those are interesting returns.
All right, I'll pass it back to you, Chelsea.
So, is continuous review and evaluation of our libraries possible? Yes. Weeding a few titles every day is possible. Larger scale weeding projects work best at the end of the school year or over the summer months. Maybe not everybody works over the summer months, but there are times to fit in weeding in your everyday. I wanted to find a statistic about how many books we should have in our library, just to give us an idea. And I found this next bullet point. Library holdings per student should equal 15 to 20 books per child and around 12 to 15 US dollars invested each year to have a positive contribution to student outcomes. It came from this book, Creating Reading Culture in Primary and Secondary Schools, A Practical Guide by Margaret Murga. And I liked having that ratio right there in the book. If you have a high ratio of books per student, it is a good indicator that weeding needs to happen. Crew also tells us that our shelves should be between 75 and 85% full. I think that's really helpful. Weeding during an inventory works well. It is my favorite time to weed when I'm doing inventories, but not everyone has time to do an inventory. But the data from an inventory report is an absolute gold mine for understanding your collections. I love inventory reports. For those of you who have never done an inventory, during an inventory process, you scan every item with a barcode in your special inventory module in your library computer system. And once you are done your inventory and you've scanned absolutely everything, the report tells you all of those items that you have in your catalog, but that you did not scan. So each line in your inventory report is like a little mystery to solve, a little book mystery. So, how can I prevent catalog mysteries? When we weed, we need to delete the attached items in our library catalog as well as the physical item. This practice keeps our catalog current and accurate. What kind of data in my catalog can I use to help me weed? I can look at the item creation date. The item creation date can really help me figure out when the books were added, so it gives me an idea of how old my collection is. So I work in Regard at the CQSB. Not everybody in Quebec works in Regard, but your library system should be able to help you search up, say, Regard started and we started to automate our catalogs in about 2002. So if I put in a 2002 search, I can see how many books I have in my shelf from 2002. And that's a really good way to go around and decide, okay, this has been on my shelf for quite a while. And I go date, by year, by year, by year, and decide whether or not I want to keep these items that are really old. We can look at the number of loans, which is always very helpful. I love looking at an inventory date. Sometimes field is empty. It means an inventory should be done. The date of status change. That is also really helpful. Um, uh, you can tell when the book was last checked out, when it was last scanned in the computer, and you can see if the date status change and the number of loans, those two often together can give you some good data on whether or not it's time to weed a book. I also like seeing the multiple copies data. Would you consider weeding if you had duplicate copies of several titles? I like looking at the data of those books to determine whether or not they should be weeded. So what do I do with weeded books? You can donate it, but please do not donate ratty, misleading, inaccurate, and dated books, especially to teachers. I know that some of our schools will put weeded books out in a little box saying, please take. Make sure the books are not too uh, old and ratty because we don't, the book has served its purpose. It's time to say goodbye to some. You can recycle them, roll the bins in and fill them up. Turn them into art. Ask the art teacher. I absolutely love using some old books with illustrations in with my button maker machine. Um, it, it they can be turned into beautiful art. I like to remove or scratch out any kind of property stamp so nothing gets returned back to me at my library. So make sure it's visible. This no longer is property of my library. Get a discard stamp and put it right on the title page. Get to know some of the free little libraries in your neighborhood and only put in some stuff that would actually maybe benefit someone. Uh, yeah, maybe some of you have some other ideas of what you can do with the weeded books. Put it in the chat. Continue learning. This book, I was not able to purchase. I put the price there. Look at it at my local bookstore. I'm still going to work on keeping my ears out for any extra budget so I can get it. The Weeding Handbook, a shelf-by-shelf guide by Rebecca Vanuk, came out in 2022. I couldn't buy the book yet, but I found the next best thing. There's a wonderful podcast called School Librarians United, hosted by Amy Herman. And she interviews Rebecca Vanuk, the author of this book, in episode 194. It's called the Weeding Expert episode. In all, I really enjoy this podcast. Hats off to Amy Herman and the work she does. There's a lot of topics covered in this podcast that you might enjoy. Overall, there were 5 different episodes that focus on weeding, including one interview that was added just on January 23rd of this year. So it feels very current. It's very nice conversation. And there's a link. You'll be able to find it in the works cited document on the QSLiN website. So that brings me to the end of my section of the presentation. I hope that you've gained some insights into the weeding process. If it feels like a daunting task, remember that actively managed library collections are a sign of a thoughtful professional who understands that libraries, like students, are always evolving. You can take your library from overgrown to outstanding. You all have this in you. Weeding is not about taking something away. It's about making a space for learning, a welcome learning environment. I'm going to leave this uh, slide up for our next section. Think about all these reasons as we head into our talk on weeding scenarios. It's going to be a bit of a poll scenario as well, to encourage some participation and discussion. So, Laura, are you coming back?
I'm here. I'm here.
Excellent. We have this set up as a poll, so take it away.
Right. So now we're going to present a few different real life scenarios that we've encountered while weeding our library collections. And it is important to realize that there is no right answer. As Chelsea said during her presentation, it's an art, it's not a science. We may all do things differently based on our collections, based on our clientele, based on where our schools are located, but it's just something to think about. And we would also like to hear your thoughts about each scenario. So after we've looked at these scenarios and discussed them a little bit, if you would like to speak, put your hand up. We'll call on you. You can unmute. You can write in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat. We would love this to be a little bit of a discussion and not just a presentation. So scenario number 1, you have a renowned author. You have their books on your shelves, and this author reveals that he is not actually Indigenous. He was also misled his whole life and is devastated. Do you keep his books on the shelf? What do you do? Would you keep his books? They're still great books. Would you weed them because they're misleading? They're advertised as him being an Indigenous author, and he is not. Or would you keep them but add a note to the author's bio if the bio actually does mention that he is Indigenous? I don't want to skew your answers by giving you my thoughts, but I'll give you my thoughts. So this is a really tough question because we do want to have authentic voices on our shelves, right? We want Indigenous stories with Indigenous characters written by Indigenous people. I think if it were just another random story, I would leave it on the shelves. But if it is advertised and promoted as being Indigenous, I think I would first see if there's any other reason maybe that it shouldn't be on the shelves. Is it an old book? Does it circulate? Is it well reviewed? If it is all of those things, then I would probably just put a note in the bio with this new information and keep it on my shelves. If for other reasons it's not a good book, then maybe I would remove it from my shelves. How about you, Chelsea? What would you do?
I would probably keep it and add a note because there are so many books that I've read that I really enjoyed, that I still think need to be shared. Just let people know the truth. Yeah. Do we
Let's see
have
the
the
results. Yeah.
results? Ah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Looks like
totally agree.
everyone agrees. Yeah.
75% keep them, but add a note to the author's bio if it mentions he is Indigenous. Yes.
Yeah. And in our chat, Randy says, keep it, add a note, educate the students about the situation. And Aaron says it really depends on the book, which is where the art and not the science come in, right? You have to evaluate everything on its own individually. Would anybody have anything they want to add to this? All right, we can move
Let's
on to our second scenario. What do you think, Chelsea? Let's go on. All right. So you have no more space in your library, no more shelf space, but you have many new books to add to the collection. What do? Do you buy more shelves? Do you rotate the collection and keep some books in storage? Or do you weed the collection, get rid of some of those books? Go ahead and answer the poll. And I will say I am a ruthless weeder. Weed, weed, weed. I don't want to add more shelves because we want to improve the physical appearance, right? It's point 1, 2, 3, 4 of the slide that's right behind the poll right now. If you're just adding more shelves and you're adding more books, it becomes overwhelming. You're not getting rid of anything. Those beautiful new books don't stand out, and it starts to look overgrown and nobody can find anything. The nice books are hard to spot among the old books. So I would just weed. I would not add more shelves. Chelsea, what would you do?
I would weed too. And I've seen storage spaces in libraries, and I don't know who has time to rotate collections. It's a nice thought. I would like to have time to rotate collections, but to change all those statuses in the catalog that it's in a storage closet and then to change them when they're available on the shelf, ooh, that's a lot of time. I would weed, definitely.
Let's see the results. Weed the
Weed.
collection
Yay.
95%. Buy more shelves. I guess it depends on how big your library is. Again, we all have to take consideration of our own situations. And if you have a
That's right.
tiny library and you actually have the space and you're trying to grow your collection and you have room for more shelves, that could be a viable option.
Yeah, and if there's a budget, Dira says in the chat, depends. Can I buy shelves? Is there space and a budget? Maybe. There's no harm in asking. But I'm happy to see that 95% of us would leave the collection. That's great.
That's it. Yeah. In the chat, Aaron says there's more than likely books that have met their end of life stage. Exactly. You have to go through your collection. There's always something that can be removed from the collection. And then Tiffany says, I think if we can really develop the reading culture in our schools, our circulation increases and the books fly off the shelves. So I would lean to buy more shelves. Interesting. The end of the school year is difficult though when you have all those books come back and you have to find somewhere to put them. But that's a different consideration altogether. You can feel free if anyone wants to have a discussion. We can unmute, we can chat about it, or we can move on. Let's move on then. Scenario number 3. So you have a book that you purchased over 5 years ago. It looks brand new, but it has only been borrowed twice. What would you do with it? Would you keep it on the shelves? It's still a good book. It's only 5 years old. Would you keep it but promote it, try to get it to circulate more, or would you weed it? Go ahead and answer this poll. What would you do, Chelsea? We'll have you go first this time.
I'm really glad that Tiffany brought up that developing a reading culture. I'm all about modeling it, reading bits of it, book talking it, trying to promote it, making a display before, especially if it's new and it's really good. So promote it.
I
That's
think
what
I
I
would
would do.
probably try to promote it as well, but having worked in a very large high school with a healthy, up until this year, healthy budget, I was buying new books all the time and I didn't have space. So if I had a book that I bought 5 years ago and it still looked beautiful, but it didn't go out, I think I would have to let it go because I just had too many new books to put on my shelves. So yeah, it's not an easy decision. Let's see the
It's not.
results. Keep the book but promote it,
Promote it.
83%. Keep the
Bravo.
book on the shelves, it's still good, 15%. Only a few of you would read it. Yeah, it really does depend on our situation, on
Yes.
your situation, on everybody. All right, we're just
Mm.
flying through these. Let's go to our next scenario. Oh, wait, we have some
Oh,
comments. I
oh,
love the comments. I love the comments. I would love it if someone wanted to unmute as well. Let's see. Barbara says, I also find that tucking the book into the shelving book truck generates interest. I find that when I go to the public library, for example, it's so overwhelming, all the books on the shelves. I tend to go to the returned books on the book truck and see what
mm-hmm.
everybody else was borrowing, and I'll
They're always the
start
most
there.
popular, the ones that just returned. Good tip,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Brandy thinks it's a great problem that I had in the high school, that I had too big a budget, no room for all my new books. This year is not the same. Um, Barbara says it works like a dream to tuck those books into the book cart. And Nick says he works with small budgets and is generally hesitant to toss.
Oh, I hear you, Nick.
Yeah,
You want something on your shelves.
for sure.
That's not easy.
Yeah, especially if it's brand new. It looks brand new. I think it's a different story when it's old and icky.
And I'm
Okay,
thinking about, uh,
go
I'm
ahead.
just going to add one last thing. I'm
Yeah.
thinking if you're working with small budgets and you tend to accept donations, use those weeding eyes on your donations as well. I wouldn't want you to add too many things to your catalog and spend time on things that are too old. That happens a lot. We're putting old things into our catalog because we don't have a budget.
Yeah,
It's a tricky one.
I tend to refuse donations and I encourage our
Yes,
libraries to refuse donations
yes.
because
Be
nothing is
very picky.
free.
Very
And
picky.
it's not free. It's your
Yes.
time, it's the supplies, the labels, the covering, yeah, it really is.
Triage. You got it,
Yeah.
Nick. Yeah. Triage those donations.
I triage those donations and
Yeah.
reject them often. Exactly. Yeah, we have
People
to
are
be
kind,
discerning.
but you know,
Well, they don't
next.
want to throw out books.
No.
We're telling you to throw out books. They don't want to throw out their books, so they're sending them to the library. But yeah, what can I say? I was lucky when I worked at Laval Senior Academy. We had a very nice budget, and I had the opportunities to be able to say no to donations and to be able
Dira
opportunity. I
just,
don't know.
Dira just said that in the world of budget cuts, donations can be beneficial. I'm I totally agree, Dira, but I say, if it's not a copyright that's in the past 2 years, I tend to refuse donations. Yeah.
I was helping in a high school just this school year. There was a new employee working in the library, and she had a cart filled with books that were donated to the library, filled. And her plan was to put those into the collection. And I looked at them and they were so old. And they
Yeah.
were a lot of them were adult books or young kids' books. And this was a high school. They were just not appropriate. They were not worth it. It wasn't worth the time, the money, the budget, and all of that. And I looked at them and I said, oh, I wouldn't keep these. And then the next time I went back to help her, I had been overruled by the principal. The principal wanted them on the shelves. So what can you
Uh,
do? At that point, she's spending her time cataloging old books to put on the
no.
shelves, and makes
Oh,
me a
that's
little
unfortunate.
sad. You don't just want books on your shelves, you want good books on your shelves. So let's see in the comments. Erin says, I have a list of things I will take as a donation and that I won't, including types of books, condition, etc. A different Erin says, I have a small budget, but equally 50% of my materials are outdated and I had to downsize my library due to a renovation. Eventually, it becomes unfair to retain older materials for the students. It's true. And I'm strategically bringing in fresh new materials. That's terrific.
Bravo, Aaron.
Yeah. With a hefty dose, this is Brandy with a hefty dose of discernment. I was given boxes of books from a community member early on in my librarian days. And one of the titles was explaining how to stoke a fire in a coal burning stove.
Oh my. I bet we all have some really good weeding stories.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's great. Aaron Miller adds, if you're in a secondary school and you get some good donations you can't use in the library, check with new teachers who are building their classroom library. That is a really good point
That's
as
a good
well. Our
tip.
teachers are always looking for but again, we want them to have good books, even in their classrooms. Did we see the results of this poll?
I think we're going
I'm
on to our
already,
next
I
question.
think we are. I think
But
we're going on to the
while the
next
poll
one.
comes up, I'll just mention Amanda's comment here. We've started putting the weeded books on a table in the hallway in front of the library to give away all kinds of books on different subjects. We did it before Christmas. Students and staff loved it. Almost all the books were taken. I hope they weren't too ratty, though, Amanda.
Well, that's what I did at LSA with all those beautiful new books I had no space for. The kids go crazy for them.
It
And the
is.
ones
They
who
do
don't even,
appreciate them.
yeah, they might not want to borrow, especially in high school. I find that the readers want to own their books. So when I give them those books, they're really excited and they just take armfuls. All right, let's move on to scenario four. What is scenario four? I have a popular book that's water damaged, but after drying it out, it's readable. The pages are warped and water stained, but there's no mold. What would you do with it? Now, we've seen this situation a lot,
A
especially in
lot.
our elementary schools all the time. Do you
Darn
keep
water
it?
bottles.
Yeah. Oh, those water bottles always spill in the school bags, always. So would you keep it? Would you keep it until it can be replaced, or would you just weed it, get rid of it? So I often think about what Chelsea mentioned in her presentation. What would the parents think if their kid brought this book home? Would I
Yes.
be embarrassed that I have this book in my library? If the answer is yes, it's gone. If it's really a worthwhile book worth keeping, I might put a note to replace it when I'm buying more books. I would replace it. But if it's not that bad, I'd probably just keep it on the shelf and maybe replace as soon as possible.
We
Chelsea,
are a small English community here in Quebec City, and I've had parents tell me, "What is my child bringing back from the library, Chelsea? You better, is this really what you're offering?" I'm like, "Oh, geez, okay, I'll have to take a look at that collection or collaborate with the documentation technician because, yeah, your reputation. Think about your reputation."
I did work on a side note in a public library. It was brand new. They had renovated, they had enlarged. I think it was considered an enlargement because they kept one wall. Um, and I remember before opening, we had to clean all the books. We had to clean all the covers with Purell, and we had to sand the edges of the pages so they would be white again. This was just a
What?
few years ago. I know, I
Whoa.
know. So we're not going to do that. We don't have time. We're very busy in our school libraries. We have to decide, keep it, replace it, get rid of it. Let's see the results of this poll.
Oh, it's closer.
Look at that. So very few would actually just keep it as is. They'd keep it until it could be replaced or weed it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It really depends. Let me see. Emily says, "Oh, this is for the previous. Any weeded books I always offer to staff first is always a great option." Kathy says sometimes it's hard because we can't find or buy them anymore. That is true,
Yeah, out of
but
print. Yeah,
yeah, but
that
I
has
don't
been
know that it's a
heartbreaking
reason
sometimes.
to keep a damaged book on the shelves. Maybe there's something similar. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it is hard. It can be hard. It's true. Brandy can't pick her job off the sanding story. Oh, I spent so much time sanding the edges of the pages. They wanted everything perfect. It was craziness. I could have a separate conversation with you about that library. We won't go there. This is being recorded.
Let's get the next
Yeah.
scenario.
So our next scenario, a brand new book comes back damaged. It was dropped and the spine is broken. Just the spine. What would you do? Would you repair it and put it back on the shelves? It won't look perfect, but it's still usable. Would you put it back on the shelves as is and just let it get used until it falls apart? Or would you weed it? Now, it's a whole other story about charging people for damaging the books. This is just what would you do with your book? I think I would just repair it as best I could. If it's brand new, it's just the spine, a little bit of glue, a little bit of tape goes on the shelf, and it'll live its life as long as that is. How about you, Chelsea?
I would definitely repair it. It might not be the greatest, but at least it's brand new. So, and yeah, I see Brandy wrote in the chat that she has a brand new, has a Cover One machine. Wow. And Brandy introduced me to a library influencer. I think her name is Heather, the contoured librarian. She has really great TikTok videos of her book hospital, but she has every gadget you can imagine that is available to repair books back to brand new status. And I really enjoy her videos if you're ever looking for some entertaining school librarian life stories and book hospital remedies. She's a really, and she uses her Cover One machine a lot. Do we have the
Interesting.
results?
Let's see. Oh,
Yay.
yeah.
Yeah, repair it.
Yeah. 5% said weed it. It's valid. I mean, maybe you have several copies of the book and you don't need to keep a damaged one. Maybe you have a healthy budget. We all have our situations. Let's look at scenario number 6. We still have time. So you have many nonfiction books in very good condition on the same topic. None of them have been taken out in the past 7 years, and you really need more shelf space. What do you do? These books are great. They're in beautiful condition. They're terrific books, but nobody borrows them. Would you keep them all and promote them? Would you keep the most recent or the ones in the best condition, or would you just get rid of them all? For me, I'd probably prune that collection. If we're talking about weeding and overgrown, I'd prune that collection. I'd have to make a judgment. Maybe I'd weed the oldest and keep the most recent. Maybe I'd keep the most comprehensive, even if it's a little bit older. Maybe I'd keep the one in best condition. You have to make your judgment call, but I would definitely have to weed. I couldn't keep them all. If they're not going out, I like to have books, you know, I can't say on every subject, but I don't like to get rid of everything on a subject.
No, I would keep probably the most relevant or the newest, the best looking one and weed some of them. And then maybe put on a wish list. I've always got my continual wish list of things that gaps that I might like to fill up. Look for a new book on sharks, for instance, or look for a new book on, I don't know, human anatomy.
Let's see what the poll says. The results show 5% would keep them all, 83% would keep the most recent, and 12% would beat them all. That's interesting. Interesting. Let's go to the chat. So there's actually a question in the chat. Um, I have a small budget. What percentage of fiction and nonfiction would you buy? I remember when it was 60% fiction, 40% nonfiction, but I believe over the years it has flipped. I think it's mostly fiction versus, 60% fiction. I can't give you definite numbers because I don't have a source to quote that. But I remember seeing that somewhere, that nonfiction with the internet, with databases, um, our nonfiction collections have gotten smaller. Do you have an answer to that at all, Chelsea?
I don't have a specific percentage, but yeah, 60/40 does sound good. I might ask, hmm, that's a really good question because you do have some students who just love nonfiction, especially younger kids. Ah, ooh, Corey, I wish I had an exact number for you, but maybe I could look it up and
Yeah.
we could.
See if we could find something. So if we go back to our scenario in the chat, Aaron Miller says it's important to promote books to teachers and staff as well. Remind them that the library is available for their nonfiction needs, especially since cell phones have been banned and the laptop carts and computers are stretched thin, like maybe a newsletter or short videos. D. Ramirez says one thing that might happen with the old books if put back in shelves is that they could affect Books with molds. If they're on the shelves, they could affect books that are in good shape. Some public libraries replace the books. Um, Barbara Whiston's curiosity is piqued. She'd like to know the percentage of fiction to nonfiction. Courtney Morrison says, I've read the 60 nonfiction, 40 fiction guideline as well. But I think
I
that's an
think it
old
is.
guideline.
If you think about trying to have a balanced collection, if you think more about think less of what percentage should I have, and just think of trying to have a little bit of every kind of format. Like you want graphic novels, you want novels, you want nonfiction, you want just try to get a little sprinkling of everything to make it balanced.
I am finding also that it's hard to find the nonfiction, especially for high school. Fiction is abundant. It's abundant, whether you're looking at your graphic novels, your junior fiction, your young adult fiction, fiction. And when I try to find that nonfiction for my high school students,
Hmm.
it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. So when I was in the high school, my fiction, it was absolutely flipped. My fiction collection was much bigger than my nonfiction collection. It's interesting.
I mean, sports books will go out. Then I remember people questioning me why I was buying cookbooks once. Cookbooks were popular, drawing books. I really wanted to have a little bit of everything when I had not when I was buying for a school. Yeah, there's
Let's
some
see,
more messages.
Julian. Yeah, Julian says if we have less print nonfiction but access to online nonfiction databases, that would influence the fiction and nonfiction on the shelves for sure. I don't know how many elementary libraries have databases. It's very possible. Um, but yeah, that's a good point. And Hannah says, I do believe it depends on the state of your collection. I have schools where the nonfiction have been severely neglected through the years, but a lot of the elementary students love nonfiction. So this year, updating nonfiction is a priority for me. Yeah.
The pet care books, they are very popular. Animal books, yeah.
Also, the disasters I remember, the
Disasters,
volcanoes and the earthquakes, the
natural
cookbooks for
disasters.
sure, the sports for sure.
Yes,
Uh,
sports biographies are
they loved
popular.
like the Where's Waldo type
Lego
books.
books, poetry.
Oh,
Mm,
poetry?
yes,
Depends.
anything. You're right. Titanic. Titanic books were always getting stolen out
Ugh.
of my public library. Yeah.
Brandy says, in the last few years, I focused on the fun nonfiction. My thoughts are always
Pirates.
that if you get them reading, you're getting them reading. So if they're reading a recipe in a cookbook, they're reading. If they're reading about a sports figure, they're reading. And that's the hook. You want to hook them and get them in.
Do we have time for one more scenario, or is our
Well,
time up?
we have until 10:30.
Oh, okay,
So we're
good.
still good. So let's go. Let's move to number 7. All right, here we're talking about a series. You have a series of nonfiction hardcover books on dinosaurs, all the different types of dinosaurs. Beautiful series. But you also have many other books on dinosaurs. Some of the books in the series go out, while others do not. And as usual, you're running out of shelf space. So what do you do? Do you keep the series complete? It's a series and weed the other books? Do you just keep the popular books from the series and the other books, or do you weed the whole series? It is all or nothing.
Ooh,
I don't
that's a
care if
tough
it's a
one.
series. I keep the books. I will keep the books that are popular that go out, and I would just get rid of the ones that don't. You, Chelsea?
Yes, I think I would keep the popular ones and looking at the data in my catalog, I would get rid of the ones that aren't circulating and always
Yeah.
put it on my wish list. There's always something new being published about dinosaurs.
Yeah, sometimes we're tempted, right? It's a series. It has to be complete. It has to go together. You have to have all of the books in the series, but you don't, in my opinion. You don't. The books aren't going out. Why take up the shelf space? Let's look at the results. Oh, 77% will keep the popular ones only, while 20% will keep the series complete and read the other books. And 3% will read the whole series, all or nothing. Interesting. Okay, let's move on to our next scenario. And there we go. You have books that are shelved in places with poor visibility. They're hard to see. They're in a bad place. Maybe they're on the bottom shelf or they're way up high or in a corner that nobody goes to. So these books rarely get borrowed. What would you do? Would you weed them? They don't go out. Would you reconfigure your shelving or would you create book displays to make them more visible? What would you do, Chelsea?
I would definitely create book displays to make some of the hidden books more visible. Definitely.
Yeah.
Because, it makes me think about when we're shopping in the grocery store, brands will pay to have their products displayed at eye level of an adult. We need to move things around so that we can see things. Um, so maybe a bit of that reconfiguring as well. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a hard one because we say we should read books that don't circulate, but sometimes they don't circulate just because of where they're located, not because they're not interesting books or not relevant books or not useful books. It's just the location isn't
it's
great.
just the location. Yeah. Give
Yeah.
give them all a chance.
Yeah, I would do the same.
Put them where the
Book
eyeballs are.
displays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Face
Yeah.
out shelving. I mean, I love this picture. I don't, if I wish I remember where I got this.
Let's see it.
I don't know where I can buy this kind of shelving or how I can convince my schools to buy shelving like this. But when you see that dynamic shelving of seeing the books out like that, they're much more enticing.
All
Do
right,
we
let's look
have
at
the
this. Yeah, the
results?
results. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
84%. Nobody would read the books because they don't go out. I'm glad to hear that. Give them a chance, right?
Mhm.
Reconfigure shelving if you can. There are times where there are shelves that I just didn't use. So when I was in the high school, one side of the bookcase, the lighting wasn't good and it's just dark and you just can't see anything. So I don't put anything there. I just, might put book displays. I might use it for different things, but not necessarily as regular shelving for my books because it's dark and you just can't see. So if you have that opportunity, it's always good. Okay, let's
Luck,
see. Is there anything in the chat?
yeah, lucky Cassandra says she does have some shelving like that, but for graphic novels, but the kids barely look behind what's in front. That's surprising. I would be flipping through those books like it was a record store.
And Aaron says face out has been proven to increase circulation. So however you can do it, it's great. A lot of my elementary school library, my libraries, the libraries that I support, I call them mine because I do have them in my heart. They use bins and they put those series in the bins where they can front face the books and it is easier for the kids to flip through them. It does take up, I think, a little more shelf space, but I feel it does make it more attractive. Kathy commented, "Oh boy, your scenarios really make us think."
Hey, I'm
That's
glad
the
to hear that.
idea. That's it, Kathy.
Do we have another scenario?
We do. We have 10. So we're
So
on to number
that's what I thought.
9. Excuse me. So, encyclopedias. You have several encyclopedia sets in the reference section on specific topics. You know, those encyclopedia sets on animals or on
Mm-hmm.
music or on
Mm-hmm.
art. And they're dated, maybe from 2007, but they're in great condition. And they have information that's still relevant, but the students don't use them. What do you do? Do you keep them and promote them? It's an opportunity to show students how to do research with print material. Do you offer them to the teachers of those specific subjects? Or do you weed them? They're not being used and they are older than the student. I think I would integrate the best of them into my circulating collection. I really don't like reference collections anymore. I really don't think they're being used. If they're beautiful books, you can't go by circulation stats because they're reference books. They don't go out, they're for in library use. So I'd probably integrate the nicest ones into my circulating connection collection for a time, see if they get used. If they don't, at that point, I would weed them. And then I'd get rid of the ones that are just not nice, not, using all your criteria. I would probably weed what I don't want to keep. How about you, Chelsea?
I would probably weed them. Yeah, and give them away if students wanted them, but I can't help but think about a series that I had for so long in French and in English called Nature's Children, and they were kind of double-sided books. They were very popular, but after a long time, they just looked so dated and the pictures were not very sharp. And I don't think the text was the highest quality, or I I'm a bit skewed thinking about these Nature's Children book. Maybe
But I
some of you
found
have
those
had them.
books. Those books still went out, Chelsea. That was my
But they're so
difficulty with those
old, Laura.
nature's
There's so many
children. I
nice new things
know.
coming out.
It's such a
And
hard decision.
yeah,
Yeah. So
do we
let's
have the
see the
results?
results. Oh,
Oh, very
wow.
even.
Look at that.
Okay.
How interesting. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. When a series is conceived, it covers normally a number of topics. So removing some unpopular books from the series will prevent both teachers and students from accessing the scope of that series they may eventually need. That might have to do with our dinosaur
Hmm.
question.
Yeah, I see your
Aaron Miller
point.
says I've started bringing a couple of my old encyclopedias with me when I do school visits about research. To give the students a visual, I'll let them flip through them. It helps lay a foundation for what's online. How interesting. Yeah. Interesting comments in
I wasn't
our chat.
I looked at a video called Teens React on YouTube, and they had one episode, Teens React to Encyclopedias, and it was hilarious. They didn't know what to do with them. They were like, wow, is this in alphabetical order? It's a pretty entertaining video, but Aaron's comment kind of made me think of that Teens React video. I recommend checking it out.
Amazing. So we have
It,
one
it,
last scenario, which is a really difficult one. I was kind of hoping we wouldn't get to it because it's a
oh,
hard decision. It's a hard decision. So let's look at this one. So you have some older books from the 1990s on slavery in the US that include black and white photos of real slaves in chains on the auction block or with scars from being whipped. And this is a real scenario
it's
that
a
one of our
real scenario.
librarians has come
This,
across.
yes.
So what do you do? Do you keep them? This is a hard part of North American history, but the stories need to be told. Would you keep them, put them aside to be used with teacher guidance only? Or would you weed them? The use of photos of someone's trauma is unethical and potentially traumatizing for readers.
Ooh,
I'm going to
that
let you
is a
answer
very
this
tough
first, Chelsea.
question. I would weed them. I think there's a lot of new things coming out that are tell the truth, but are more sensitive. Yeah, it's tough, but I think I would weed them.
Yeah, I think
I
I would look for more recent books on the same topic. As you
Yes,
mentioned in your presentation, with the Judy Blume, just talking about the cover, but just how books are written for the audience of the time. And books from the 1990s are very different from books written in the 2020s.
yeah, there are so many terrible bits in history that we learn
Yeah.
about by browsing library books and mm, I mean not just slavery, but history's pretty brutal. It would, Pascal says it would depend on the age of the readers. If I was in a high school, yeah, I'd
Well, these
still
books
read
are from the
them.
1990s, right? So I
Then,
think just
yeah,
based on that, I would get rid of them, but I would look for something to replace them with because 1990s it's old. It's old. Barbara says really also depends on the level you're serving. In elementary schools, these are a
Oh,
clear
yes,
weed. In
yes.
secondary, it's more complex. Absolutely. Let's look at the results. Oh,
Oh, good.
look,
45% would weed
yeah,
them.
45 would weed them. Yeah, interesting. It is. You can see how it's split because my thoughts are split as well. I can't, it's such a difficult question. I'm not surprised that everybody's reactions are a little bit different. Well, oh, there's one. Oh, who wrote them? McCartney wrote. I don't know.
Ooh,
But that would be an important factor to take into consideration, actually. Aaron says, honestly, why would we have any books in our libraries that weren't published in this century? We have learned to be more sensitive and aware with time. Books reflect that. Absolutely. And Barbara says, depends also on how teachers address slavery in the classroom. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've come to the end of our scenarios. If there's anything anybody would like to say, now's your chance. Otherwise, I will say thank you to Chelsea for your terrific presentation. I would
thank
also
you.
like to thank all the members of the QSLiN Professional Development Committee, without whom these PD sessions could not happen. And thank you all for attending today's PD session. We hope it was useful and gave you enough confidence to get out into your libraries and weed like a pro. This presentation and other takeaways can be found on the QSLiN website. Thank you again for coming, and we hope to see you at the next session in May on the practical uses of Canva. Thank you.